My mother was shot when I was little. After that I had mental problems, I ran out of pills and I forcibly stole my daughter from her birthday party. At 34 my life had completely spiraled out of control. Just yesterday it seemed like I had it all, a promising job, a cool ride, a cozy apartment, but waking up on another dreary weekday I felt a bitter emptiness inside. This wasn't the life I had dreamed of in my college years. Shaking off the numbness I forced myself out of bed. In the bathroom I splashed cold water on my face trying to shake off the drowsiness. Looking at my reflection in the mirror I barely recognized the lively guy who once brimmed with energy and ambition. Now a tired face stared back at me, someone disappointed in his fate. My birthday had just passed. 34 years old. Instead of celebrating with friends I spent it in complete solitude, lying on a worn-out couch all day mindlessly flipping through TV channels. The atmosphere was so oppressive that I didn't even have the energy to order pizza or crack open a couple of beers as I used to do in years past. This gloomy state wasn't caused by bad life circumstances. My job was relatively stable and well-paying. I had enough money for rent and car expenses, but with each passing year the feeling of meaninglessness grew stronger. I caught myself thinking that I was just going through the motions, ticking off the time from paycheck to paycheck. No bright events, travels, or new acquaintances. Life had become confined within four walls. Looking at my gaunt face in the mirror I realized this couldn't go on. It was time for a drastic change before I completely lost it to this suffocating routine. I tried to lift my spirits by joining a nearby gym. Maybe a pumped-up body would bring back a drop of self-confidence, but after a couple of weeks of intense workouts nothing changed. The apathy only deepened, plunging me into even deeper depression. The problem ran much deeper, rooted in my difficult childhood. When I was just 8 years old, I witnessed a horrific tragedy that shattered my child's psyche completely. The echoes of that trauma haunted me to this day. One evening my parents took me to visit my cousin brother. Nothing foreboded trouble until the deafening shots rang out. Suddenly we found ourselves in the midst of a street shootout between gangs. My father dashed towards cover, but didn't make it. 2 bullets literally tore him apart before my eyes. My mother rushed to him and was shot too. It all happened so fast that I didn't even immediately grasp what had happened. Since then I looked at the world like a broken doll with an empty gaze. People around me seemed like potential threats. I had shielded myself from them with an icy armor, appearing calm on the outside but torn apart inside by unbearable pain. Now trying to break free from this stifling reality I often encountered invisible barriers erected by my maimed childhood psyche. Any attempt at something new triggered a horrible fear and panic. Completely broken, I wandered into the nearest pizzeria, deciding to distract myself with some tasty food. The waitress, a young cheerful girl, sensing my despondency, tried to cheer me up with a couple of routine jokes. Contrary to expectations, I responded not with the usual sour look but with a crooked grin. The waitress's name was Mary, and since then, she made an effort to serve me whenever I visited. Gradually, a kind of friendship developed between us, that of a customer and service staff. Mary, with her harmless jokes and casual conversation, helped me momentarily divert my mind from tormenting mental demon. Our brief conversations, albeit formal, already seemed like a healing balm for my emotional wounds. After a couple of months, I dared to take it further and suggested Mary to meet up sometime after her shift. To my surprise, she eagerly agreed. Thus, for the first time in many years, a true friend entered my life, unburdened by the weight of the past and ready to accept me for who I am. Meeting Mary helped me take the first tentative steps towards overcoming the closed circle of depression and fears, and through her, a path to closer connections with other people unfolded. In order to have more opportunities to interact with her, I even decided to work at the same pizzeria while I earned enough to get by from my main job. The existing funds were constantly insufficient here. I could earn some extra money and spend more time with Mary. Initially, my colleagues greeted me with caution. After all, a new waiter in his 30s didn't quite fit into the youthful team. However, Mary's genuine interest in me and her subtle hints helped quickly melt the ice of initial mistrust. Working at the pizzeria, albeit in a supporting role, became an opportunity for me to crack open the door to a new, unexplored world of live communication. Conversations with colleagues, shared smoke breaks, complaints from dissatisfied customers, it was all like a breath of fresh air for a suffocating person. I absorbed every detail of these everyday situations, so mundane for others but becoming my first lessons in rebuilding normal social skills. And the main driving force behind the changes was Mary. Only for the sake of her sunny smile, for the chance to look into those radiant eyes full of life again, was I willing to step towards my biggest fears and complexes. Mary became that ray of hope that helped my soul awaken from the long slumber of neurotic phobias. With her by my side, I gradually began to return to normal life, restoring elementary household skills under her careful guidance. I mastered the basics of cooking simple dishes, having previously mostly relied on dry rations. Mary taught me how to properly set the table, arrange the dishes, creating a cozy atmosphere even for a modest dinner. I relearned the skills of cleaning and maintaining cleanliness in the apartment. Before meeting Mary, my home was in disarray. I simply didn't see any point in it now. I tried to keep the place tidy, hoping to one day invite her over, and Mary was happy to share her culinary and household secrets. In conversation, she mentioned that she had come from sunny Arizona in search of a new life. From her emanated warmth and boundless zest for life. Such a contrast to my previous emotional abyss. Catching myself wanting to do something nice for her, I involuntarily absorbed this positive mood. Mary was my guiding star, leading me out of the black hole of despair and apathy. And one day, mustering enough strength, I finally decided to invite Mary over to my place for dinner, which I would cook myself that evening. As I opened the door to my small but neatly arranged apartment, I felt like a pioneer, taking a tentative step into an entirely new, unexplored world. Mary beamed with a joyful smile, walked in, and glanced around my modest abode. I held my breath, fearing any reaction from her, but she simply gently patted me on the shoulder and said, "Looks great, Sam. I'm glad you could push yourself." However, it was far from a romantic date night. We simply spent time with a couple of pizza boxes and liter bottles of cola. The atmosphere was as homely and familial as it could be. Mary skillfully juggled conversation on casual topics, preventing it from fading into awkward silence. I, on the other hand, silently enjoyed her presence, absorbing every word, every gesture. That evening, there was not a hint of flirtation or potential relationships, but the mere opportunity to sit together, share a meal at the same table, exchange a couple of jokes. It was an event. For me, perhaps, for someone else, such pastime would seem deadly dull, but for me, it was the first step towards overcoming personal loneliness, a kind of ritual initiation into a more open and vibrant life. As we said goodbye, Mary hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thanks for inviting me. You've shown that you're ready to change." I didn't know exactly what the girl meant, but her words instilled hope that this cozy evening was not the last, and maybe someday, our relationship would indeed evolve into something more than just friendly companionship. However, since I didn't have close friends to consult on this delicate matter, I decided to confide in my new colleagues from the pizzeria. The next workday, during the break, I cautiously brought up the topic of Mary with Jake, a young guy, my peer. He listened to my story, grinning and patting me on the shoulder. "Dude, you just leveled up to 370, exclaimed Jake in admiration, hearing about my dinner with Mary. "She's totally into you, it's as clear as day." I looked at my colleague, bewildered, waiting for explanations. He just rolled his eyes. "Man, you're slow. Mary has been giving you all the green lights from the get-go. Dinner, hugs, goodbye. She's been waiting for you to take the initiative." I nervously swallowed, stunned by this interpretation of events. Did everyone else find it so obvious? And I, immersed in my inner world of fears and complexes, apparently missed all of Mary's signs of attention. "If you're serious about this chick, you need to step up before she hooks up with some fast dude," Jake continued, skillfully weaving in slang. "Talk about yourself, invite her to cultural events, surprise her with bouquets, basically, go all out to impress her, man." I nodded, thanking my colleague for such valuable advice. Inside, a timid hope began to sprout that Mary might indeed have feelings for me. Having taken note of Jake's friendly hints, I gained confidence and began to show more signs of attention to Mary. We started to meet more often after work, going for walks in the park or just sitting somewhere in a cozy cafe. I tried to talk more about myself, my hobbies, and dreams, and Mary listened eagerly to my words, also sharing her own life stories. Our relationship grew stronger, evolving from friendship into something more. A couple of months later, Mary simply leaned in and gently kissed me. I broke into a happy smile, feeling as if I had shed a heavy burden that had weighed me down for years. At that moment, all doubts faded away. Mary felt closer and dearer to me than any family member. Soon we began living together. It happened naturally, without official marriage ceremonies or paperwork. My things just somehow migrated to her apartment at some point. We had a joint budget, and we shopped for groceries and household items together like a real strong family. But deep down, there was still insecurity. Mary was a bundle of charm, full of life, energy, and plans for the future, and I stuck in my petrified world of apathy and fears. At first, I thought it was just a temporary reprieve, and soon Mary would figure me out. Losing all interest, however, with each passing day of living together, she only held on to me tighter, sharing her innermost thoughts. However, something out of the ordinary happened a couple of months into our life together. Returning home from work one day, I found a slim, fair-haired boy of about 8 in the apartment. The child was sitting on the couch and, upon seeing me, he shrunk back into the cushions. "Sam, this is Billy, my son," Mary calmly said as she entered the room after him. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier." My legs went weak. I just stood there, stunned and unable to utter a word. "A son? Mary has a child. Why did she hide this from me all this time?" Seeing my shocked reaction, Mary rushed over to me and took my hand. "Sammy, I wanted to tell you, but I was waiting for the right moment. I was afraid of scaring you off. You know how difficult it is for you to connect with people," she sighed and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Listen, if we've decided to be together, then now we'll have to live as a family of 3. Billy is a good boy, he'll quickly get used to you. I believe we'll make it work." Mary hugged me, trying to reassure me, but I was already beginning to feel the first signs of a panic attack. A crushing weight, sudden mood swings, a sense of endless fear, all the symptoms returned after a long lull. I was shaking, emotions raging inside like a hurricane pulling away from Mary. I rushed to the bathroom, retrieving a hidden pack of pills from its secret place after being wounded in combat. Doctors diagnosed me with PTSD and post-traumatic stress disorder, which required constant medication to alleviate. Otherwise, horrific bouts of breakdowns would overcome me, further crippling my psyche. Swallowing the pills with a gulp of water, I slumped, settling on the floor. Worried voices from the living room echoed Mary's and the child's. How could we be a family after this? Once again, I found no answer. Gradually, the panic attack subsided, the calming effect of the medication taking hold. My thoughts gained some clarity, allowing me to soberly assess the situation. After all, I was no longer a young man, and there was hardly a better option for me at my age than Mary. Yes, she had a son, but was that really an irreparable flaw? Many men raise adopted or stepchildren, and if lucky, the boy might still accept me as a father. On the other hand, our apartment was already tiny, with no space for a child. But perhaps I could earn more money, or Mary could take on an additional job. After all, any housing difficulties could be resolved with determination. Regaining my composure a bit, I stepped out into the living room. Mary immediately hugged me tightly, and behind her, Billy peeked out cautiously. The boy watched me with apprehension, apparently frightened by my strange reaction. "I'm sorry, I really should have told you right away," Mary whispered, covering my face with kisses. "I just got so attached to you that I was afraid of ruining everything." I nodded, indicating that I generally accepted the situation. Then I leaned down to Billy and awkwardly ruffled his hair. The child relaxed a bit and even smiled back. Later, when I was alone, I called Jake and the other guys from the pizzeria to share the news and get their reaction. They were just as shocked as I was that Mary had concealed the existence of her son. Many condemned her for such an act, calling her deceitful and advising me to end the relationship. However, within me lived the hope that I could still accept Billy, and he, me. Several years passed. Billy quickly got used to my presence in his and Mary's life. I tried to treat the boy as my own son, playing with him, helping him with his studies, taking him for walks. Gradually, he opened up, accepting me into his childish heart. Mary literally glowed with happiness, seeing us grow closer. And then another joyful event occurred in our family. Mary became pregnant, and 9 months later, our tiny daughter Ellie was born. Overwhelmed with emotions, I cried, pressing the little girl to my chest for the first time and feeling the beating of her tiny heart. The apartment we rented became cramped for our family of 4. It wasn't easy. I had to leave my previous stable job and become a freelancer to earn more. But the difficulties were worth it. We managed to buy a spacious 3-bedroom apartment where everyone found their own place. Billy now dutifully carried the proud title of elder brother, trying to set an example for little Ellie. And with a pounding heart, I watched as my once bleak world gained more and more colors. Of course, there were still difficult days when nightmares from the past haunted me or when I was overly exhausted from work. But now, I always had loved ones waiting for me at home, ready to support and comfort me. Mary and the children became my reliable anchor. That island harbor amidst the stormy sea of life's adversities. Sometimes, looking at our cheerful family nest, I mentally returned to that suffocating abyss of loneliness when even simple human interaction seemed an impossible task for me. How wrong I was back then. It was enough just to trust people and allow them into my life to bid farewell forever to the oppressive darkness of the past. However, after some time, something extraordinary happened that threatened our entire family comfort. Due to issues at the pharmaceutical warehouse, my vital medications for treating PTSD stopped being supplied. They couldn't be ordered online or purchased at a regular pharmacy. And without regular intake of the pills, my condition began to deteriorate rapidly. Gradually, my supply of medication dwindled. I tried to stretch out the remaining pills by taking minimal doses. But sooner or later, that fateful day would come when the last pill would leave the package. Mary lived in constant fear, seeing me go crazy due to the lack of necessary medication. At times, I experienced fits of rage and aggression, becoming uncontrollable and dangerous to those around me. She didn't know how to help me, and only one thought kept her going in these difficult times. Soon, our daughter Ellie's first birthday would arrive, an important family celebration for which I would have to pull myself together, and so, holding the last pill from the almost empty package between my fingers, I decided, it should be saved for Ellie's birthday celebration. On this day, it was so important to be fully conscious, to immerse myself in the atmosphere of joy and family warmth. All other symptoms would have to be endured for as long as possible. I saw how Mary simultaneously rejoiced and worried about me on the eve of the celebration. On the one hand, the baby would finally celebrate her first big holiday in the complete family circle. But on the other hand, what if my condition played a fatal joke on this day, on our little one's birthday? All close relatives and friends from the baby's daycare gathered. From early in the morning, the apartment filled with the atmosphere of celebration, colorful balloons, melodious children's songs, and the smell of delicious baked goods. Closer to noon, I solemnly took my last pill, praying that it would last the whole day. At first, everything went smoothly. I radiated happiness, hugging Ellie and receiving congratulations from the guests. The baby rejoiced, tearing open bright gift packages. Mary ran between rooms, trying to please everyone present. However, as the evening approached and the main festive banquet began, I felt the first signs of growing tremors and anxiety. My body demanded a new dose of medication, which, alas, I no longer had. I tried not to show it, wrapping myself in a blanket and sipping hot tea in an attempt to calm my nerves. Suddenly, one of the loudest boys dropped something, and there was a deafening crash of broken dishes. In an instant, all the sounds and colors of the celebration merged into one insane carousel, hitting my strained psyche. I felt a sharp panic attack engulfing me entirely. Throwing off the blanket, I leaped to my feet, looking around wildly. Through a red haze, I saw only bizarre blurred shadows of people around, silhouettes of monsters eager to tear me apart. Their malicious roars merged into one oppressive rumble, causing me to frantically clutch my head, feeling unbearable pain inside my skull. Somewhere in the background, in the distance, I heard a piercing child's cry and Mary's frightened exclamation. But reason had completely left me, leaving only primitive terror and a desperate need to survive at any cost. I roared furiously, blindly waving my arms and instantly demolishing any obstacles in my path. In an unconscious rage, consumed by the madness of the attack, I dashed into the children's room, where a frightened Ellie sat in tears. With remnants of sanity, I understood, I needed to get my daughter out of here, take her far away from this nightmare. Scooping up the little girl in my arms, I rushed towards the exit. Mary, in horror, ran after me, trying to shout something and call for help. But reason had completely shut down, leaving only instinctive animal impulses. Seating Ellie in the back seat of my car, I collapsed behind the wheel and hit the gas. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mary rushing out onto the street, helplessly waving her hands after me. Guests poured out of the entrance, their faces filled with alarm. But I just angrily tore off, ignoring traffic signs and rules. In such an unhinged state, it was contraindicated for me to drive, but I couldn't think straight. Mary immediately called a taxi and set off in pursuit. Praying with all her might that I wouldn't cause a horrible accident, she instructed the driver to chase after my car, keeping it in sight. Meanwhile, she frantically called the police and emergency services, begging for help. From the outside, my driving looked like a madman's reckless race. I ran red lights, weaved haphazardly between lanes, rudely cut off and overtook other cars. Ellie, trembling and sobbing, clung to her seat, not understanding anything and pleadingly looking at me, and so we raced headlong, oblivious to the road, until the car broke down due to malfunction. Pulling over to the side, I gathered the trembling, terrified Ellie in my arms and staggered forward, still undecided on the direction. I walked along the deserted highway, periodically mumbling to myself incoherently. Suddenly, police car lights and an ambulance surrounded me. By chance, I had just turned onto this shoulder, and Mary, with the medics and police, caught up with us. Mary immediately rushed to me, trying to take the crying Ellie from my arms. But I had completely lost my mind, refusing to release my prey and fiercely pushing Mary away. Paramedics had to restrain me right on the road and administer a powerful sedative injection. Gradually, my resistance weakened, reality blurred, and I collapsed weakly onto the cold asphalt. For the last time, I saw Mary's tear-streaked face, holding the frightened Ellie close to her. And then emptiness engulfed me entirely. I woke up in a hospital ward, strapped to the bed with soft restraints. Mary sat nearby with tear-filled eyes and a face aged by stress. A doctor stood next to her, explaining something. Listening closely, I understood. A long course of treatment awaited me in a closed psychiatric facility. The attack had unlocked some deep layers of post-traumatic stress disorder in me, requiring serious rehabilitation. Slowly, the full extent of what I had done began to dawn on me. I had ruined my daughter's birthday, which she had been eagerly awaiting. I had endangered her and myself with my insane driving. But the most terrifying realization was, because of my outburst, little Ellie had experienced severe stress and psychological trauma. Who knows how this would affect her fragile child's psyche? I turned to the wall, giving vent to tears of shame and remorse. Maybe someday Mary and Ellie will be able to forgive me, but it's unlikely that I myself will ever be able to finally get rid of the internal demons that have been following me like a persistent shadow for many years.